Nexus mods will and must follow the law. That's a direct quote, it's a fun quote, and it's also why Discord currently wants to scan your face for seeing anything not safe for work, even if it's just a meme. And the thing is, this is not scaremongering, this is not dystopian fiction, it's actually happening right now, and on July 25th, it will become law. Law that's actually got teeth. As an example, Steam could lose $2.5 billion over a simple checkbox. That's 10% of their global revenue, and it's all because they ask, are you over 13? Instead of scanning your ID or scanning your face. But even before the law goes online, I have a totally different example of this literally killing a game. Here's one called Urban Dead. It's an online zombie survival game. It ran for 19 years, and then the Online Safety Act killed it. Not hackers, not bankruptcy, no, fear of an $18 million fine. And that is what the Nexus mod owner was talking about when he said that basically, the law is the law, and the site must follow it. Sites will need to fundamentally restructure themselves and change how audiences interact and share content online, because if they don't, they will face financial obliteration. And make no mistake, this may be starting in the UK, but it is already spreading. The internet is changing, and the deadline for compliance is here. So let's get into the impact. But there's actually another thing I noticed when I was tracking this story on Ground News. They're today's sponsor, they're a tool I used, and the news is this, that the UK has just declared that Apple and Google have got a, quote, effective duopoly over mobile. That's obviously interesting because regulation, this stuff does impact us, but it's cool looking at how this is actually being covered. Ground News here shows only 11 sources pick this up, and the bias split, well, 88% center coverage. Just one right-leaning outlet touching it, and 0 left-leaning sources touching it. So guess what? I kind of knew about this before it spread, before other people did. But here's where it gets interesting. Framing. Financial Times says it's a shake-up to mobile platforms. BBC goes very straightforward with the effective duopoly quote. CNBC, though, well, they emphasize the market power, which is way more emotive. And what I see here is that even amongst high factuality rated outlets, well, what is it? Is it a shake-up? Is it a crackdown? Is it a, quote, signal to the market? It's the same regulatory announcement, but totally different narratives and framings over whether this is routine oversight or some sort of major confrontation, even though it's 100% high factuality ratings across all of the sources. And that's just a few of the ways the Ground is awesome. You can track different stories, you can set it up for your locality, and even get the blind spot feed. So for all of this, and to use the plan that I use, which is the Vantage plan, well, you go to ground.news/Bellular, and if you go there, you get 40% off unlimited access with the Vantage plan. It's the best deal that you'll get for my subscribers, and you'll find it in the link down below. Okay, July 25th, that's the deadline, and that is when companies must comply with the United Kingdom's Online Safety Act. And this means the services they offer will have to change, all because of this new UK legislation. What's the big focus then? Well, it's about protecting under 18s through hardline verification. Essentially, that means no checkboxes, real verification. You know the way as kids we would all click the little checkbox saying, I'm an adult, I'm totally allowed to use this service, even if we weren't. Yeah, that's no longer going to cut it from a legal perspective, and companies will be held liable. Now, this is going to apply to any website or service that's operating within the United Kingdom, and the penalty for breaking it is $25 million or 10% of global revenue, whichever one is higher. But it's not just the UK. Australia has actually got a similar law in the works. It's not taken effect yet, but it's at least on the way. And even looking at the US, we can see stuff in specific states. Florida are already banning under 14s from social media. Then there's Texas. They couldn't ban under 18s from social media entirely, but both Utah and Texas now demand something else, that companies must verify users' ages at the point of using an app store. And the EU, of course, has got new laws as well, and they've even got an open source tech solution for verifying ages. So overall then, here's the thing with all of this. It doesn't matter that respected organizations oppose this. And make no mistake, many of them do. The Wikimedia Foundation is calling these a massive threat. The Electronic Frontier Foundation are also not fans of this. They say it threatens online privacy, security, and speech. But these laws are moving forward anyway. The governments don't really seem to care that much about those criticisms. Now, we've already talked about this one before with Discord. If you remember, of course, the news breaking about not safe for work stuff on Discord, and you basically needing to validate your account with a facial scan or, piece of ID. Now, those systems exist, they're being tested for UK and Australian users right now, and it basically means if you want to access an adult tagged channel or server, then you'll need a scan of your face or your ID. This hit me when I was looking at my Warcraft guild's memes. It's like, hey, you want these memes? You gotta identify your face. It doesn't really feel great. Now, the way this works is either your facial scan or your ID then goes to a third party. That third party will then confirm if you're allowed to access the content, and that will then basically flag your account as being allowed or not. And that essentially means that for Discord, they kind of just get a black box. And what they get out of that is this user validated? Are they not validated? All of your actual personal info, that's going to the third-party provider, which of course is one that would exist in a very heavily regulated space. Or so you would hope. Anyway, after all that scanning is done, then good, you can continue as normal. And if you think an American IP address would save you, then no. Think again, because we're already seeing these roll out across basically everywhere. It essentially seems that this is the way the wind is blowing globally, and because of that, loads of companies are changing things. That means established sites are restructuring at a fundamental level, and that is why we've got to talk about Nexus mods. Nexus mods had a choice: either block content geographically for EU and UK users or adjust the site accordingly. Of course, they chose to adjust, but so far they haven't actually said exactly what they'll do. So we've got no confirmation of like facial scanning or documentation checking, but they will have to implement some form of meaningful check in order to be compliant. What about everyone else? Well, they're redesigning the site to help with this whole EU and UK process, and some of that's actually good. It's going to mean new content tags, new filtering options, people will be able to block things like harmful substances as a tag if they really want. Basically, all of this stuff that's existing within wider adult content filtering. But on top of that filtering and categorization, the site's also getting some new tech, where basically it will be able to pick up on illegal or abusive content upon upload, or when it's posted to something like comments. Of course, that's how it'll work in theory. I'm sure there'll be false positives and false negatives, but that's at least the system that they're implementing. Now, to be clear, right, these are not new draconian rules from government. This is content that's already banned, right? Already banned on Nexus mods. Essentially, what's changed here is their incentive to robustly enforce the rules that they've already got. Where basically a lot of governments will say, all right, but a checkbox, an age checkbox with no verification, that just doesn't cut it. We all know what's going on. That's kind of what the governments will be saying. And yeah, it's okay if you've got a not allowed content policy, but if you don't enforce it, if you don't scan files, then what good is your policy? I'll leave specific thoughts about the nuts and bolts of this to you, but basically understand that it's all part of the same big old response to a lot of this new legislation, right? Better scrutiny, better review processes, more control for users, all of that stuff. But for Nexus mods, the timing was especially noteworthy. You see, some people connected these changes to the sale of Nexus mods. Yeah, you may not know, it was actually sold. It was sold to a company called Chosen, who are a growth company, which does honestly sound a little bit spooky. But people basically argued that this was capitulation to, the growth company and line go up. They essentially said Nexus was doing this to avoid scaring potential investors, that it wasn't actually based in any principles. But at least if you listen to the owner of Nexus, who, obviously does have a horse in this race, Dark One, he did say that basically he's kind of relieved. Because with the sale, he's glad he doesn't actually have to deal with any of this bullshit anymore. But he did say that if it was still under his ownership and control, that he would still follow the letter of the law. Because the thing is, if he didn't, he would be fined 10% of global revenue, and the only way to get around that would be to just geo-restrict Nexus mods in entire regions, which probably wouldn't be tenable. The biggest problem, though, the letter of the law isn't 100% clear to everyone, and compliance itself is in fact a risk. Right, here's what you need to know about the actual law. So, the Online Safety Act passed in 2023, but UK government changes delayed things, as they so often do. The implementation process was long, so it actually took forever for details to emerge, like who's affected, how are they affected? Now, to deal with this, UK organization Taiga have been helping games companies navigate these sorts of laws. They've been doing this for years, so what they're trying to do is get everyone ready for the deadline, which is essentially upon us right now. So what we can do is we can try to use their understanding of this law to guide us a little bit. Now, per them, any game available in the UK counts if users can interact. And that means user-generated content, text chat, voice chat, I guess maybe emotes, just basically anything that's user to user, which is absolutely huge in scope. This impacts so many games, so many websites. Now, it is fair to say that a lot of the requirements are already things that are common practice. That means risk assessments for under 18s accessing your game, content moderation tools, reporting tools, clear codes of conduct, basically that type of thing. Now, all of this is going to need designated individuals who report to Ofcom, who are the regulator, and that means you're going to need things like timelines for removing inappropriate content. Now, a lot of this already exists. A lot of this was already being done. It's just that it's being codified, and there really is teeth behind it. And of course, the framing is, as it always is, the protection of the children. And that is where the age verification thing comes in. That is why you'll be asked for your face and your ID far more often. Basically, anything risky goes behind an age gate because that just manages risk, and that's all that these companies basically want. They just want to dodge all of this shit and have to spend as little of their money as they possibly can. So far, most requirements just involve cataloging risks. What are the companies actually doing about those risks? Well, Ofcom have been reviewing these reports since spring. Once they're done reviewing, they'll issue some guidance, and then the fine stuff won't actually kick in until late autumn this year. So at least there's a little bit of time where, it won't just be, hey, it's the 26th of July. I would like 10% of your global revenue, please. Thank you very much. That would be a little bit hasty. Anyway, the effects are already damn clear here. With big companies, we see it in the way of compliance, but with others, we're actually just seeing people not willing to take the risk. Especially, say, those who are running specialist forums. Yes, if you're running a specialist forum, you might have to deal with this. I suppose we as an organization won't have to deal with this because, we have our members' Discord. That's on Discord, so it's Discord's thing. But, if we were to roll our own forum, I suppose we would actually have to deal with something like this. It would probably mean I'd have to have another software subscription to some company that, just provides compliance services. That's one of the things that happens, right? You'll have new regulatory guidelines, and then loads and loads of companies will exist to provide compliance services. Now, a casualty of this is Urban Dead. It ran for 19 years, 8 months, and 11 days. It's actually one of the longest running browser games on the internet, and the Online Safety Act has in fact killed it. Now, it was a text-based MUD, multi-user dungeon. It's something from a long time ago. Text-based MUD. It's got a cult following. People love it, but of course, because there was people there, well, the game was allowing for user interaction, which would mean it would be subject to this law. And that then meant that this game, which is a community-supported project, faced a fairly large dilemma. They either spend significant money to refit the game and refit their infrastructure to fit all of this, or risk a fine of up to £18 million, or just simply end support and take no chances. And unfortunately, they chose the latter. They have shut down. And the worst part, right? Projects like Urban Dead, things that are of true deep value to people, they're just collateral damage because we all know they're not the real target of this legislation. I hope I'm not stating the obvious when I say this is a law built for the big players like the Instagrams, the TikToks, social media in general. It's why Reddit now requires a selfie or ID to access 18+ rated subreddits. Basically, the bigger your audience, the more stringent the rules. And to meet the criteria, you needed to be filling out risk assessments and doing all of that work months ago. Of course, those companies are really big, so they have whole departments to do shit like this. And of course, it does also include gaming. As an example, Roblox is adding age verification, plus they're going to limit chats for 13 to 17-year-olds. If you're wondering how, well, it's by forcing them to scan real-world QR codes from their friends. But you might then wonder, what about traditional platforms, the ones we use more, like, say, PSN, Xbox, Steam? Well, that's where it's bad for Steam. You see, PSN has been good for years, where they do mandate age verification for UK and Ireland users. They basically use the same tech that Discord uses. Xbox lets you make locked child accounts, but regular Microsoft account creation, it's just a CAPTCHA. There's no other limits. You can just log into Xbox directly and message people, though you would need to add them as friends first. So definitely risky there. But as for Steam, well, for them, it's just a tick the "Are you over 13" box. That's it. That's all you need to create a new account. Now, there are limits for direct messaging, right? Where you can't DM people until you've spent at least $5. So in theory, right, like a debit or credit card check is verification, but Steam also lets you add cash via gift cards. And that would basically circumvent the card check verification side of things. And then, of course, there's the Steam forums, which are fully visible from the start, as are streams. Those can obviously be full of adult content, and the adult content filters are on by default, but obviously can easily be turned off. And we all know what your Steam front page looks like if you turn off all of those filters and go to new and noteworthy. There's a lot of porn. So, does this mean that Valve and Microsoft are breaching UK law? Well, in a way, we won't really know until Ofcom publishes like a naughty list and starts threatening people for 10% of their global revenue. Or, I suppose, until these companies make the compliance changes. But make no mistake in your expectations. With the scope of these fines, these companies absolutely will be making changes. And that's because the penalties are huge. Here's the simple truth, at least how we see it. Any company that allows users to post content must reckon with these laws. And if they operate in these territories, they must comply. Because these laws are being implemented, compliance will be enforced. Now, yeah, users hate verifying identities. I don't enjoy it, it's not fun. I mean, you'll accept it if it's something like registering to a bank, but it does feel weird if it's Discord or something innocuous. But companies are not going to risk losing 10% of their global revenue. Again, not geographical profit, no, global revenue. That's a fuckload of money, and it goes deeper than that. They also won't risk the reputational damage of being the first company fined. Now, they can lobby, they can try workarounds, but the risks are just too great. It is just like the Nexus mods man said, the law is the law, and these companies will and must follow the law. Because funnily enough, they're big companies, they face incentives, and they are going to follow their incentives. And that means that your experience on these sites and with these games will change. But that's not it. You see, if you love legal stories like this, there is one swirling around PlayStation and basically artificially inflated high prices. There's lawsuits popping up all over the world, and to learn about that story, you can watch this video next.